Hello everybody and welcome to October, the month where I tell you a whole bunch of spooky things. Today we are talking about Lake Superior and why Lake Superior is terrifying. And I have my Lake Superior shirt on. It's pretty funny. I'm going to turn this off because I find it annoying. No one cares about any of this. Let's talk about the Edmund Fitzgerald, which was a freighter ship that shipped freight in between... In like the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, that kind of time range, right? It was a very big ship. It was 728 feet long. I think that's pretty big for freighter ships, typically. On November 9th, 1975, it set out on its last voyage. But no one had planned for it to be its last voyage. It just was its last voyage. That's pretty ominous. The next day, it was in Lake Superior, when it encountered like this freak storm that Lake Superior has a tendency to have, like these massive freak storms. Well, the Edmund Fitzgerald found itself in the middle of one. Yeah, essentially what happened is that it sank. And the thing that is really weird about it is that the Edmund Fitzgerald had never sent out a distress signal. So they think it sank like really fast, like so fast that no one even had time to send out a distress signal to anybody else. And no one knows exactly what happened. And it's really weird because it's unusual for freighters that big to sink. In fact, the Edmund Fitzgerald is the largest freighter to ever have sunk, I think, on the Great Lakes. Very spooky, I would say. So yeah, that's kind of like the overview of the Edmund Fitzgerald. We could talk a whole bunch about the Edmund Fitzgerald, but that's not primarily what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about what happens to bodies when they sink, when they are at the bottom of Lake Superior. So normally in most lakes, the bodies, a body of a deceased person, if you put them at the bottom of a normal lake, after a few days, their body will like bloat up with gases because of decomposition, and the body will just float up to the surface. So it won't last very long underwater. Lake Superior is actually much different. The bottom of Lake Superior is extremely cold, like not extremely cold, but like in between like 30 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the temperature that they keep morgues at. Because that's the temperature where bodies decompose the slowest. Also, there's not really any predators at the bottom of Lake Superior. What I'm trying to say is that bodies in Lake Superior pretty much are preserved, like forever, and they don't bloat up at all. They don't like float to the surface. If you put a body at the bottom of Lake Superior, it'll just stay there and be preserved pretty much forever. It's really spooky because like the fat in a deceased person at like the bottom of Lake Superior will eventually turn into this substance called adipocere, which is like a soapy substance, and it makes like deceased people look like ghastly white, and it's like pretty like horrifying. Yeah. So that's a crash course about what happens to people at the bottom of Lake Superior. Why am I talking about all of this? The Edmund Fitzgerald sank in like 1975. Well, there was a guy named, what was his name? Fred Shannon. And in 1994, he wanted to film a documentary about the Edmund Fitzgerald, so like 20 years later. And he had like a special a submarine built or whatever, right, to get footage of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And at that time there had been like tons of expeditions to the Edmund Fitzgerald, and like people had like explored all the halls of the Edmund Fitzgerald that they could get into and like looked all around it, and no one had ever found like a dead body at that point. Even though the dead bodies should have been preserved, no one had ever found a dead body at that point. So Fred Shannon and his crew were probably not expecting to find a dead body. But they did find a dead body, and they got footage of a dead body. It was like on the, I think it was on the seafloor, like pretty close to the Edmund Fitzgerald, like a little distance away. And that's why no one had ever seen it, I guess. Because no one had visited the seafloor next to the Edmund Fitzgerald. I don't know. But the point is they had gotten footage of a dead body, and Fred Shannon had said like, oh, I'm going to use this footage of this dead body in my documentary. Well, that's a problem because, you know, this was only 20 years after the Edmund Fitzgerald had sank. That deceased person still had living relatives that, like, you know, remembered them and, like, did not want the footage of their dead relative to be, like, released in this documentary. So the family members of the deceased crew of the Edmund Fitzgerald all got together. I didn't mention this before, but like all of the 29 people on the Edmund Fitzgerald died. I don't know if that was clear, but like it's just like very, very sad and very weird. But anyways, the family members of the crew, of the 29 crew members, got together and they asked the Canadian government, because the Edmund Fitzgerald sank in Canadian waters. They asked the Canadian government, like, can you please make it illegal to film dead bodies in the Great Lakes without the next of kin's like consent, right? Or to like at least release that footage, right? Commercially, or whatever. Eventually they did get the Canadian government agreed. So it is now illegal, I think, in the Great Lakes to like video or take photographs of dead people. And generally, like, people don't like dive to shipwrecks where there are dead people living in there, because it's just kind of weird. It's kind of like visiting, you know, like a grave site. Like you wouldn't like dig up a dead person's grave just to look at them. And it's kind of similar. Like, should you really dive to a shipwreck to like look at dead people? Like, maybe not. So generally, people don't go to shipwrecks that have dead bodies in them. Except for one. This is pretty much why I wanted to make this video. There's a ship called the SS Kamloops. It was a lake freighter. It sank off the Isle Royal in Lake Superior, probably on December 7th, 1927. So a long time ago. And there was a bunch of crew. There was like 22 crew members, and all of them made it off the boat and were able to swim to shore, except for one. All of the crew members that made it to shore either starved to death or froze to death or were eaten by wolves. But that's another story, right? Like, none of them survived, even though like some of them made it to like land. All of them, but one person made it off the SS Kamloops. One man. And he does have living relatives today, but it was so long ago. Like, it was only, I can't remember when it was discovered. It was like discovered, the shipwreck was discovered in like the 90s, or something, like very, very recently. And the shipwreck like sank so long ago that all of this man's like living relatives like are fine with people diving there and taking pictures. So you can go to the SS Kamloops, the shipwreck of the SS Kamloops, and dive there and see a dead body there, which is pretty terrifying. His name was never released. Like, the general public doesn't know his name. Like, there are people that do know who he is, but like, it's never been released publicly, right? Because obviously they contacted like the guy's next of kin, and like the next of kin like don't care because they've never like met him or whatever because it was so long ago. Yeah, so anyways, you can dive to the SS Kamloops, right, and see this man, which people have named Old Whitey is this man's nickname, or some people call him Grandpa. Well, what happens to scuba divers when they dive to this? It's a pretty hard ship to scuba dive to because it's pretty deep and it's pretty cold. So like only like experienced divers can go there. But if you're able to do it, and if you find Old Whitey, this is based off of of what I read. Apparently, because of the kind of the motion of like your flippers, if you're scuba diving, that'll create like kind of like a vacuum, right? Or like pressure, right? And there have been people that have visited this dead body, and the kind of motion that their flippers make cause the dead body to like follow them around like the ship. This is what I'm trying to say. You can go to this ship and visit this body, and as you go around the ship, this dead body will follow you around. And I read that someone said that like the dead body had like reached out and touched them at one point. And like there's people that say like, oh, I think this ship is haunted. Like not only did I see the body in like separate rooms, like I saw the ghost of old Whitey. That's completely terrifying. Why would you want to go there? And imagine if you didn't know that, though. If you just went to this ship and you found this dead body and it started following you around. Terrifying, terrifying. Yeah, this is... Oh, and they have pictures. This is the guy. You can see his boots in this picture. I don't know. It just seems very, very, very scary, I think, this whole ordeal. I probably will not scuba dive to any shipwrecks anytime soon, because now I'm just freaked out.